Hi, welcome to this preview video for Firefighters on Duty. This is a brand new game hitting Kickstarter soon. This is a game from RTPA Games, a company that brought us a lot of interesting games, games like Project Elite, Among the Stars and many others. And this is a game of real-time fun, a game where players are assuming the roles of firefighters, trying to put out fires and solve different scenarios. So you play different scenarios and you can play them again and again. This will remind some ideas from the main mechanisms of Project Elite, but there is a lot more in this, so it's not a theme, it's a totally new game which uses the same, I would say, tension and fun and real-time under the hood that the Project Elite does. And I'm saying it's because Project Elite is a fantastic and very successful game, but it brings it on a different theme with different ideas, additional options and things to try, and a lot of scenarios for players to play. Firefighters on Duty is a game that is going to be enjoyed by all those who like fast-paced games, who can feel and want to feel the tension and the stress, let's say, of firefighters trying to put out fires. It uses action dice that players roll and roll again, trying to get the different action dice results in order to use the different actions, move their fire trucks, get to fill them up with water on different locations from hydrants or from their fire supply, bring the water truck so that they can supply different fire trucks, and the water supply truck is common for the players, all players can use them. But then again, you activate different equipment, you have debris, you have fire spreading in a very, very unique and different way from what we've seen so far. And all this, honestly, hands down, it emulates on the board, on tabletop, the fast response that you need to have for firefighters, the balancing and jiggling and having all the things up in the air, trying to be at the right place, take the distress calls in the correct timing, because if you leave them then you're going to have a late response and you have more hazards and more difficulty added on the board. All this throughout the different up to 6 rounds of the game, and trying to solve the scenario. Each scenario has different objective, so the main rules apply, but you may have to evacuate people, to escort someone, or to do different things depending on the scenario. This game is played from 1 to 4 players. It's extremely fun, very engaging, very intense, a very, I would say, memorable gaming experience that you're going to play again and again. I'm going to add a link in the description of the video for the crowdfunding Kickstarter campaign page, so you can follow more on the game and see all the beautiful things that they're going to unlock. I've played the game with this prototype, and even though it looks fantastic, in my opinion, it's beautiful and wonderful. They're going to prepare and make more things and I would say, value for money production from what I hear. So follow this for the campaign. Also, I'm going to add timestamps in the link of the description, on the description of the video, so you can navigate directly to specific sections of the rulebook, and join me at the end of this video for a final wrap-up about my opinion from the sessions I had so far from Firefighters on Duty from RTPA Games. Step into the heat and embrace your heroism with Firefighters on Duty, a real-time cooperative board game for 1 to 4 players. During the game, players immerse themselves in intense 2-minute rounds in which they manage an entire fire department. They're tasked with dispatching vehicles and firefighters across the city, extinguishing fires, saving civilians, and safeguarding properties. Every round, players roll their action dice as quickly as they can and perform actions based on the symbol they roll. Every choice carries weight, as the clock is always ticking. You need to work together, make decisions under pressure, and risk it all to keep the city safe. So let's dive into this preview video for Firefighters on Duty. Keep in mind that even though this looks fantastic, really beautiful on the table, still it is an advanced prototype. That means that a lot of things already have changed in terms of improvements, art or additional components or recessed boards and different things that you can follow through the link in the description that I'm going to add for the campaign, which is launching anytime soon on Kickstarter. So bear that in mind, that there is even additional further improvements, since the game has been, of course, already developed, but there is also some work in progress in terms of making everything more shiny and more appealing, which is already, in my opinion, is fantastic. I would buy this off the shelf already as it is. But anyway, let's dive into the components of the game. I'm going to add the link in the description of the video, so you should follow the campaign from there, but keep in mind that the components as they are for the moment, exact details you'll find on the crowdfunding campaign page, but as they are on the moment, they are 6 vehicle miniatures, 4 fire engines in 4 colors, 1 water truck, 1 civilian transporter, 64 wooden tokens, which they're going to be, I think, if I'm not mistaken, still printed also, but just check the crowdfunding campaign to be sure. 52 fire, 8 fire hose, 4 fire axe, 8 firefighter, 10 civilian and 12 injured people. 26 cardboard tiles, which includes 8 double-sided city blocks like this one, which make up the map. These are very, very nice, illustrated, spacious and thick cardboard with nice art, and depicts the modular blocks that you use according to the scenario to compile the different layout of the city. You have 4 fire hydrants, 4 fire engines, and these are really also really nice cardboard trucks, which are going to be recessed with slots for things, but they already look very, very nice as they are. You also have 1 water truck, 1 people carrier, 2 fire stations, 1 gathering point, 3 burn down areas, 1 hospital and 1 truck. The game comes with 92 dice. Yes, you heard correctly. The base game comes with 92 dice, 80 water dice, which are these fantastic small dice which depict the amount of water that you can carry and use it to roll it to put out fires. 8 all-purpose dice, 8 action dice, which are custom, and they have the different symbols for the different actions that you resolve during the action phase. More on that later. 72 cardboard tokens, 10 debris, 10 explosive substance, 10 fuel tanks, 10 electricity, 12 extinguished difficulty, 1 round and 1 scenario points. 56 cards, 23 events, 16 distress calls, 4 hazards, 4 fire axes, 4 electricity shutoffs, and 4 player aids. One of these for each of the 4 will go to the players. 2 rule books, 1 main rule book, and 1 scenario booklet. Now, these are the components again at this stage, but we're going to take a better and deeper dive into the components and make a closer look on what's what in the following minutes. Component breakdown. First, we start with the city tiles. Firefighters on Duty comes with 8 double-sided city tiles. These are these tiles here, which, as I've shown you before, they're thick cardboard, they have nice art, they're spacious with area for the fire trucks to move around, but also a nice depiction of the art of the city. These tiles are used to form various maps, and each different scenario you play dictates which tiles are going to be used, as well as the side and orientation of each one that will have, meaning if it's going to be from the front side, which has the white letter, or the back side, which has the black letter, same letter B from one side and the other, but just it's black or white depending on if it is the back side or the front side. Now let's see quickly a few things about the anatomy of the tile, so we get familiar with the concepts of the game. We have roads, and these are roads, as you can see. They go around various blocks. On these roads and spaces are fire trucks and other vehicles are going to move, going towards hazard and danger as the game expects. So these are spaces, and you can see that these spaces are separated by either dashed lines, which are crossings for pedestrians, or white lines like this. So meaning that this is one space, this is another space, and this is another space. So you get the idea. Now, all the gray areas are considered to be road spaces, and these connect the different buildings in the game. We have the space number. So each tile has, as you've seen, a letter. For example, this is tile F, as you can see, but also has a number for each of the space, whether it's a road space or whether it's an area space. So for example, you see that this road has a 2. That means that if you want to identify it by number, this is F2. This is F8, for example. Okay, this is F6. Or this building here, it's F3, because you have also the number. So all spaces are numbered, so they can easily be identified and located with a quick glance. So we also have the area type. You see that they have different dashed borders. This one has green, this one has red, and this one has yellow. These are the area types. Green areas include more residential buildings and often have higher population numbers, like this one. Okay, so block of apartments, for example. Yellow areas feature weaker structures which have a higher chance of collapse during disasters, like this one, maybe in an old abandoned building or an outdated city block or whatever. Then we have the red ones. Red areas include more industrial buildings which have increased flammability, like this one. Okay, and this is going to make sense more later on. Road spaces are separated by white lines and white pedestrian crossings, as I have said before. They are also separated from areas by pavements. So you see a crossing, a pavement, and a white line, and another white line, and another pavement, sorry. They make up a road space, respectively. Both roads and areas are considered spaces, and each space features its own space number, which is used in various ways during the scenario setup, event, etc. While roads are accessible to both firefighters and vehicles, so you can have both firefighters and vehicles on road spaces, keep in mind that only firefighters may enter areas like this. So you cannot have a fire truck or another vehicle on an area, but you can have both firefighters and vehicles on road spaces. And as I have already mentioned, every city tile has its own letter in order to be easily recognized. So here you see that's tile B, for example. Okay, and the front side of each tile, as I have said, features that letter in white. So white. The back side features that letter in black. This way allows players to easily follow setup instructions or events that occur, making every space in the game unique. For example, A2 white is different than A2 black, meaning the orientation of the tile. And this describes unique locations within the city, of course. Vehicles and vehicle tiles. Each vehicle in the game is represented by a miniature as well as a cardboard tile. There are two types of vehicles. First of all, we have the player vehicles, which are colored in green, red, blue and orange. Firefighters on Duty comes with 4 fire engine player vehicles. During setup, each player chooses a color to play with throughout the game, and each fire engine may only be moved by one player who has chosen that color. Loading and unloading each fire engine with firefighters, for example, like this, or water, for example, or equipment can also be done by that player who owns it. So this is an example of the miniature. Again, this is a prototype, but look how cool these look. Very, very nice. And we have the matching tile as well. So each one has their own color of fire truck and the engine fire truck tile, respectively. Then just focusing simply on the anatomy of the tile, you can see, for example, that it depicts the fire engine truck. It has the area here to add the water. So here you collect the water that you have, okay, that you can carry with you and use it to put out fires, of course. This is a water tank. It's going to be recessed during the deluxe edition of the Kickstarter, so you can check more on the link that I'm going to provide in the description. It has slots, so it can carry firefighters. And it has an action slot here where you activate it by placing, this is going to be a gear in the final copy, not the water symbol. So by placing the gear icon there, you can activate it in order to put out fires, considering that you then pick up a number of carried water cubes, dice, and then you roll them and trying to put out the fire. More on that later. Each fire engine can carry a maximum of 12 water. Water is represented by blue dice, and each die counts as 1 water. To do so, the water must be properly arranged within the water tank when being loaded. If any water is left outside, because again, this is a real-time game, okay, so it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of tension, but if any water is left outside or forgotten to be loaded correctly, then it's considered to be spilled and you cannot carry it with you. You have to remove it and put it back to the general supply. To avoid wasting time properly arranging water, player may choose to load less water into the tank. And these fire engine trucks, they start loaded, fully loaded with 12 pieces of water, 12 dice of water. Common vehicles. Firefighters on duty comes with two common vehicles. A water truck, which is this one, the tile and the respective miniature, and a people's carrier, which is this one, with the respective miniature. Contrary to fire engines, these vehicles may be moved by any player, thus they are grey. So let's see the water truck miniature, really nice, fantastic I would add. And this is the respective tile. It has two compartments and each tank can be loaded with up to 12 water dice, okay? But it starts with no water dice at the beginning of the game. And you have the people carrier, which is this one. This is used to pick up and deliver injured people and deliver them to the hospital, okay? It can carry both citizens and injured citizens, and it has two slots respectively. The water truck is a common vehicle that can carry a large amount of water, and each of these two tanks can hold up to 12 water, as I have mentioned, and water may be loaded and unloaded to the water tank by any player that has access. Everybody has access to this common vehicle and their respective two tanks. The people carrier miniature and respective tile. The people carrier is a common vehicle that can carry up to 2 civilians or injured people. Civilian and or injured people may be loaded or unloaded on the people carrier by any player. So as you can understand, in the game it can carry both injured and non-injured civilians, okay? So this is representing the cargo, the passengers they're carried, and this is a physical miniature on the map of the city. A word about vehicle movement and operation. Vehicles may only be moved on roads, and no more than one vehicle may occupy a road space. Vehicles may only move from a road to another road that is orthogonally adjacent, and vehicles may not move diagonally. An exception to this limitation above is the road space within each fire station, which can hold any number of vehicles during the same time. So you can see here on this fire station already have the common water truck and the green and the red player fire truck, okay? But during movement, you will see how we move. We spent action dice to move. You have to move from one space to the other. You cannot have at any given time two vehicles sitting on the same road space, okay? And also the only exception, as I mentioned, is the starting road space just outside of the fire station. And again, to demonstrate, you can only move orthogonally. So one with another die, you can move here with another one here, 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 but from here I cannot go directly diagonally here, okay? So I need to go either here first and then down, or below and then there, okay? So this is how movement is done on real time, of course, but players need to keep in mind these rules. Dice. Firefighters on duty features 3 types of dice. We have water dice, these small, cute blue dice, which you can see that they have numbers all the way from 1 to 6, and they're these small dice. You also have these water dice are used during the action phase when attempting to extinguish fire. We'll see how this is done later on. We have the all-purpose green die, which is this one, just featuring a D6 with numbers from 1 to 6. All-purpose dice are used throughout the game whenever rolls are required to determine outcomes such as equipment use, fire spread, etc. And last but not least, the most important dice in the game are the action dice. These two are action dice examples. They're both the same, identical. Every action die in the game is the same. Action dice are used during the action phase and allow players to perform various actions, according to the explanation that we're going to give later on. Cards. Within Firefighters on Duty, you will find the following type of cards. First of all, we have the event cards that you see here. Whenever an area that is on fire reaches a critical level, an event card determines what happens next. Depending on the area, if it is green, you're going to flip a green card, which determines what will happen if that area, green area, reaches critical level. More on that later. If it is a yellow area, we flip a card from the yellow deck. And if it is a red area, industrial areas typically, as we have seen, we're going to flip a card from the red event deck, which will determine what will happen to that area once they reach the critical level. More on that later. Another type of cards are the distress call cards. These are the distress call cards and they are linked with these markers, the distress markers. They are set during setup according to the scenario. Now, each scenario indicates a number of distress calls players must respond to during the game. By responding faster, players are able to reduce the severity of each distress call. More on that later, but let's see the anatomy of the distress call card. If we respond very fast, earlier than what the round indicates, so for example, if we respond to this distress call before round 2, okay, this is what will happen. If we do it by round 2, this is what happened on time, and if we reach round 2 and we have not responded yet, or round 3 or 4, depending on what the distress call indicates, okay, so if we reached the round for the distress call and we have not a firefighter there to respond, then we resolve the late. So fast, on time, and late response time. And the respective event, what happens, you see the severity becomes stronger and stronger if you are late to respond to the distress call. Another type of card that we have in the game are the equipment cards. Every firefighter, every player should say, starts with 2 equipment cards in the base game. During scenario setup, players receive a number of equipment cards, allowing them to perform action during the game. So you should check your scenario to see if you have potentially more equipment cards. Okay. You have the equipment name, fire axe or electric shutoff. Then you have the action slot. Here is to place one of these results. Here we need to place two dice, okay, to be able to use this equipment. Below you find the effect. In this case, roll a d6 and remove 1 debris token on a roll of 4 and plus. In this case, you remove a specific electricity shutdown token from the area so that you can avoid further disaster. And also a last type of card that we have are the hazard cards, which show different types of hazards. Hazard cards feature various hazards players must take into account during the game to successfully extinguish fires or prevent unfortunate events from taking place. These cards are used as a way to randomize this deck of cards, the type of tokens that should be added on the space during the setup or during the game. So you just draw a card and then you see which type of hazard will be added. For example, thick smoke one, an explosive hazard, etc. Tiles and tokens. Firefighters on Duty features various tiles and tokens that play different roles within the game. First of all, we have the fire stations. The base game comes with 2 fire stations. It's this tile here. It's set up according to the setup. It has a road space in front of the fire station. There is a road space, so all our fire trucks start from such spaces. It's the only road space that has unlimited capacity, because on any other road space you can only have 1 vehicle. It has the fire station's water reserve. This is an area where players throughout the game trying to build up a pool of reserve of water so that they can load it once they reach this location and put it on their tank, on their tile, okay, so that they can again hit the road and try to put out as many fires as possible. Also, I should mention that during setup, as you're going to see, we have the firefighter figures, typically 8, split it between the 2 fire stations, so 4 here and 4 in the other one. And then we have the starting the equipment, also fire hoses and axe tokens at the fire station. And this can be loaded in the respective slots of the fire truck, respectively, and carried out to the location where they need to be used. This is the other tile that we see. This is the hospital. It has a spot for the people's carrier, so it goes and comes here to deliver people on the location here, where injured people are going to be delivered there as an unloaded space. We also have other tokens. Let's briefly see them. We have first of all the hazard tokens. Let me show them all here so you get an idea of the different types of hazards. This is the gas tank. This is the explosive substance. This is a thick smoke and it has 2 sides. It starts as 2+ and then goes to 1+. And this is the electricity. We also have the distress call tokens, that they have the distress call icon and the number of the round that they need to be resolved, no later than that, according to the scenario setup. We have the extinguish difficulty. You see that some locations they have the extinguish difficulty already printed, but you also have markers so that you can modify this and identify higher extinguish difficulty. For example, if you have a smoke, you need to increase it, a thick smoke. Then we have the debris tokens. Already some you can find on the map according to the scenario or on different buildings. These are the debris tokens that they need to be cleared with fire axes and firefighters. We also have the burn down tiles. If an area is burned down, it's replaced with this burn down tile, and if an area is burned down, it can no longer have fire spreaded on it. Okay, but it also gets you closer to losing the game. We have the evacuation point. Depending on the scenario, you need to evacuate a specific number of citizens to the evacuation point, and this can be placed, depending on the scenario, on different locations. And last but not least, we have the fire hydrant, which is a very cool little token, this one, that is placed on specific locations according to the scenario. And between rounds, during setup also, it's loaded with some water, so it can act as some kind of mini tank, let's say, of water for fire trucks to load water from and use it to put out fires. Okay. This is a round track which goes all the way up to 6, and the round marker. This is a separate one in this prototype, but it's going to be embedded on the hospital tile. The same goes with the scenario points that you can use. You're going to be able to place them there. And last, the wooden tokens. Again, this is prototype, but just to see what's what. The yellow one is the firefighter. The purple one is the civilian. The gray one is the injured person. This is the fire hose. This is the fire axe, and this is the fire, respectively. Setup. At the start of the game, players choose which scenario they want to play from the scenario booklet and decide the spread difficulty. They form the game board in the middle of the table by placing the city tiles, fire station tiles, and hospital tile on the position and orientation instructed by the chosen scenario. The following steps needs to be followed. First, each player chooses a color and receives the corresponding fire engine miniature, which is this one, together with the fire engine tile, this one, the matching color, 2 action dice, 1 and 1, 2, and 1 all-purpose die, the green one, as well as a fire axe and an electricity shut-off and a player card aid as well. So this is the player aid card. It acts as a round overview, and it has also the dice action as a reminder at the back. And these are the 2 equipment cards that people get. Each player gets 1 fire axe and 1 electric shut-off equipment. You can see that the borders are matching the color of the player, red or blue or green, and there are 3 cards in total. Second step that we do is we separate the event cards into 3 piles based on their background color: green, yellow, and red. We shuffle each pile and form 3 decks. Place those 3 decks next to the game board, and then also shuffle the distress call cards and the hazard cards and form 2 additional decks based on their back. You place those decks next to the game board also. Each fire truck is loaded with 12 water dice. You take all remaining water dice, the blue dice, and make a pile close to each fire station, and whenever water is used to extinguish fire, return the water dice to one of those piles. Fourth step, you take the common vehicles, the grey color ones, and that's a water truck and the people's carrier, respectively. So you take those common vehicles, the grey ones, and you place the water truck starting in one of the available fire stations. That's player's choice, either here or across in this scenario, which is the other fire station here. Up to the players where they want to place it starting. Then the people's carrier, this miniature here, starts at the hospital, and you place the water truck and people carrier tiles next to the game board where players can easily reach them. Fifth step, you take all the fire tokens, these tokens over here, and you make a pile close to the game board. Fire that gets extinguished should be returned to that pile respectively. The sixth step, you take all the fire hose and fire axe tokens and place them on the available fire stations. You divide them between the fire stations freely. You take civilian and injured persons meeples and place them in 2 piles close to the game board. And then you take the firefighter tokens and place them on the available fire stations, divide them between the fire stations freely. Whenever a firefighter becomes injured, gets replaced by an injured person token, you return the firefighter yellow token to one of those available fire stations. Last but not least, you place the fire hydrant tokens on the spots indicated by the scenario you have chosen. You fill each one with fire hydrant tokens with 4 waters. So you see, this is the token, the fire hydrant token. It has a slot for 4 waters to be included. The specific location of this fire hydrant next to this road space is indicated by the scenario. Same goes with all these tokens. Gameplay. We have the game phases. A game of Firefighters on duty is played over a maximum of 6 game rounds. Each game round is broken up in the following phases. As indicated on the player aid, also we have 4 phases. First is the beginning of round, second is the action phase, third is the fire phase, and fourth is the end of the round. Now, let's dive a bit more on each of these actions. We start with the start of round phase. And during this phase, we refill all fire hydrants to their full capacity of 4 waters if needed. All inactive fires are turned upright and become active. So wherever you have a fire that it's on its side, you have to make it active by making it stand still. Stand upwards, that is. And this is conveniently reminded also on the player aid, as you can see. At this point, players may discuss and coordinate on their strategy. Once ready, they may begin with the next phase, the action phase. Action phase. For this phase, you take a digital timer or a cell phone with a timer feature and set it to 2-minute countdown. During this phase, players have 2 minutes of real-time gameplay during which they must perform as many actions as possible. They do that using their 2 action dice. Remember, each player has 2 of those action dice and they use it to roll it and perform actions. They roll them as many times as they want, and each die features 4 symbols. Whenever the player rolls one of those symbols, they may perform the corresponding action. There is a reminder of the dice faces at the back and the respective actions explained. So, let's see the list of actions a player can perform during the action phase. The first one is this icon. This icon stands for move a vehicle. Each time a player rolls this symbol, they may move their own vehicle, their player color vehicle, the fire truck, or any common grey vehicle to an adjacent road. We've seen how movement works. It's important to note that vehicles may not move to a space already occupied by another vehicle. They can, however, be moved to a space that contains any number of people. That's allowed. And vehicle damage. During the fire phase later on, you'll see that it could happen that a vehicle may get damaged. To showcase this, you place a fire token on that vehicle's tile. If a damaged vehicle gets damaged again, for the second time, then it is removed from the game. Another option is the water result. Each time a player rolls this symbol, they may perform one of the following actions. They increase the water reserve with this action, and a player takes one water small blue die from the general supply and adds it to a fire station's water reserve. If there is no more available water in the general supply, this action cannot be performed. So, very simple. If, let's say, by rolling and rolling, I manage to roll any of those water symbols, I just take, for each symbol rolled, one of the water dice from the common supply and add it to my fire station's reserve, which is included in this section. Keep in mind I have two fire stations, thus two separate water reserves, so I can split them. I can put one here and one to the other one, or both here. It's up to me depending on my strategy. I take them from the water dice pool and place them in the fire station reserve. For each time I roll the water icon on my dice rolls. So I keep rolling and rolling and rolling and doing different things depending on the actions of the phases, but whenever I roll this one, I gain one water dice, adding it to any of the two reserves. And this, I mentioned, we can do two things. Actually, it's the same thing. We can do it at least in any of the two fire stations. Okay, that's what I meant before. The gear icon, this one. When I roll this icon, I can use it in two ways. The most common way is to extinguish. So this is going to have a faded print of a gear symbol, so ignore the water for the moment. So whenever I roll this, I can try to extinguish fire. So when performing this action, a player must take the die with the symbol and place it on the action slot on their fire engine track, like that, initiating the extinguish process. Then they take any number of water, small blue dice, from their engine track, their own fire engine track, and nominate the space where they wish to extinguish and roll the chosen number of dice in a single row. In order to perform an extinguish action on an area, on a road space, the fire engine of that player must be on that space. So in this case, you see, in order for me to extinguish the fire on this road space, my fire engine needs to be on this space respectively. In order to perform an extinguish action on an area, the presence of a firefighter as well as a fire hose is required on that area, and in addition a player's fire engine must be present on an adjacent road. So you see, firefighter, hose to put out a fire on this area, but my fire engine needs to be in an adjacent road space to this yellow area, for example. It could be either here or here. They both consider adjacent to this space. Now, you see a water requirement here. For example, here it says 3+, here it says 4+. Each area features a water roll requirement. A roll of 4 or more will successfully extinguish one fire on an area, with a 4+ requirement. For each successful roll, one fire token may be removed from that area. So if I'm here and I roll 2 3s or 1 3 and 1 4, for each of those, because there are 3+, I can remove one respective fire token. Once the results have been resolved, the process can be repeated again by once more by nominating an area, activating the fire engine and rolling water dice, and fire on roads can be extinguished with a roll of 3+. So this fire here requires a 3+. All road spaces can be extinguished with a 3+. The area spaces have the identified roll that you need to roll depending on the different type of area or the different location. Note that several players may perform an extinguish action on the same area at the same time using the same firefighter and fire hose. However, each one may have their own they may have their own fire engine actually located on a road adjacent to the area, and also an area containing a firefighter and a fire hose next to another area also containing a firefighter and fire hose. which is eligible to be nominated for extinguishing. So that doesn't mean that, for example, only this player can do it. You can have this player extinguishing with this fire, and this player extinguishing with this. Okay, so they can do that respectively. Next phase is the firefighter phase. Each time a player rolls this symbol, they may choose any firefighter on the board, any yellow figure, and move it to an adjacent space. So for example, for each time I roll this, let's say I rolled 2 times this onto my 2 action die, I can make 1 and 1 and move them. Okay, so I could be moving them on adjacent spaces orthogonally. In addition, using this symbol, a player may move civilians or injured people, meaning that if there is a civilian where I am, by activating one of those phases, I can move them to the next location. Also, keep in mind that players can also move injured people. In order for a civilian or injured person to move to an adjacent space, the presence of a firefighter is required. And something important, while civilians may be moved, as I've shown you, from space to any adjacent one with the assistance of a firefighter, an injured person may only be moved through areas, meaning through such areas like that, until they reach a road space, meaning an injured person moved on a road space with the assistance of a firefighter, and from there an injured person, the gray one, cannot be moved. They can only be collected by bringing the respective vehicle, the people's truck that can carry them back to the hospital. Okay, but you need to be also moving those with these symbols in order to get them in place. What I'm trying to say is that injured people, once they hit the road, they have been removed from the dangerous area and they're on the road waiting for assistance from the people's truck, but they cannot keep moving on the roads in comparison to simple civilians which are not injured. And the intention is for injured people to be transferred to the hospital where their destination is. Previously, when I was explaining what we can do with the gear icon, I failed to mention that we also have the equipment cards. Various actions throughout the game require the use of gear symbols. Once rolled, gear symbols can be placed on the corresponding action slot to allow a player to perform these actions. For example, to activate equipment cards. So if I roll this one, I can place it here, and assuming that I have a firefighter on a debris tile, as explained here, and I'm carrying a fire axe, okay, with me, then I can try to roll a 4+ on this die in order to remove the debris and clear it. And different equipment cards, as you can see, do different things in the game. Free actions. During the action phase, players may also perform several free actions that do not require any dice roll to be performed. Let's see some of those. Loading, unloading water. During the action phase, players may freely load and unload water from and to their vehicles. Fire station reserve, which is this one over here. In order to load or unload water from a fire station reserve, a player's fire engine or the water truck actually must be present on the fire station road space, meaning that you must have your fire truck or your water truck there in order to load on that respective tile from your fire station pool onto the respective vehicle tile water. Each fire engine may only be loaded by its owner. That means only the blue player can pick up dice from the fire station reserve and place it on the blue tile, but the common gray vehicles can be loaded from any player. The fire hydrants. As we've seen, we have the fire hydrants that they have they start with 4 dice and they are replenished between rounds. Any vehicle able to carry water also must have water from the fire hydrant in order to be loaded on it. To do so, the vehicle must be brought on the space that is adjacent to the fire hydrant, according to the scenario. And moving water from vehicle to vehicle. Let's say that we're somewhere and we have a lot of water on the fire truck and we want to move it to this fire truck on the water truck. We want to pass some from this to that one, and this can go in that direction, and this can go and supply another fire truck, theoretically. Water may also be freely transferred between vehicles on adjacent spaces. Okay, that's the only location where you can have 2 or more vehicles. But if we were like that here, let's say, the green one can load from the gray common one or the gray from the green one, but only if they are in adjacent spaces, when they are outside of their fire station location. So, loading and unloading firefighters. During the action phase, players may freely load and unload firefighters on vehicles capable of carrying them. In order to load a firefighter on a vehicle, the firefighter must be on the same space as the vehicle. Meaning that, let's say this is here, and you have this firefighter here, they have put out a fire. The blue player can load them on the respective fire tile on the location for the firefighter as long as they have a space. But only the blue player can load them on their own tile. Loading and unloading firefighters from a fire engine may only be done by its owner. However, as soon as a firefighter is unloaded from a fire engine, any player may utilize the firefighter as normal. Loading and unloading equipment, fire hoses and fire axes. During the action phase, players may freely load and unload the equipment onto vehicles capable of carrying them. In order to load an equipment on the vehicle, the equipment must be on the same space as the vehicle. A firefighter does not need to be present in order for equipment to be loaded, so you don't need to have both a firefighter and a hose or an axe. It can be only the fire truck. Theoretically, someone is driving it. It's important to note that if the timer has stopped, the players cannot resolve any unresolved rolls on their dice, but if they had already allocated one of their dice on a slot, for example on equipment, they are allowed to resolve that particular action. For example, extinguish a fire if they have placed it on the gear on their fire truck or the gear on one of their equipments. Next phase is the third phase, the fire phase. During the fire phase, the timer has stopped, so the fire grows and expands. In addition, various events may occur. We perform the steps in the following order. First, radio reports. We check for casualties. Search throughout the whole city for any space containing a fire and an injured person. So if you have a fire and an injured person, okay, like that, then in such a case the scenario is a failure and players lose the game immediately. Okay, because there is a death of the person which was injured. Injuries. Search throughout the city for spaces that include fire and firefighters or civilians, meaning we have a fire and a firefighter and a civilian, or a fire and a firefighter. In such cases, in such areas, spaces, the civilian is become injured. Okay, so if you had a civilian here in a fire, let's say it was like that, then the civilian will become injured. The same happens if you have an active fire and a firefighter in this location, like this one here. The firefighter and civilian tokens are replaced with gray ones. That means you remove the firefighter and you place an injured person, or if it was a civilian, you remove it and again you place an injured person. Keep in mind that if any firefighter tokens that get replaced by gray ones, then the yellow ones are returned to the fire station, so that they can, players choose which one of the two, and players can get them back into the fight. Additionally, any equipment in such areas is destroyed to the fire and returned to the fire station respectively. You can also have a vehicle damage. For example, let's say you are in a location where you have an active fire and a vehicle, like this one here. In such cases that you include a fire in a vehicle, all vehicles in such spaces become damaged. You take one fire token from the reserve, yeah, and you add it onto the respective vehicle to show that it has one damage. And if that respective vehicle has already been damaged and it is about to receive a second damage, then that vehicle is destroyed and removed out of play. Then area burns down. You search throughout the city for areas containing 3 or more active fires. Wherever you have 3 fires, exactly 3, let's say that in this case this area has been neglected. Okay, so let's say we have 3 fires at this stage. We couldn't put it out on time. That means that this area gets burned. Okay, so that means we remove the fire tokens. We place a burn tile here, and we increase, we lose scenario points by 1 for each such area, and we return any equipment on such area to the fire station, and these areas can no longer catch fire, debris, and injure people as they are treated already burned down. Then we check for any areas with critical level. We search throughout the city for areas that have not 3. The areas when they have 4 fire tokens, they become burned down. Okay, when you check, and if they have anyone has 4, then it becomes burned down, and then you lose 1 scenario point from the scenario. Okay, and if you lost the last one, then you lose the game. But assuming that you don't have any more or any other burned down areas with 4, then the next thing that you check is if any areas is in critical state. An area is in critical state if it has 3 fire tokens, like this one over here. It has 3, so this is on critical state. That means that for any such area, we draw and resolve 1 event from the respective token. That means here it's a green border, so we would flip and resolve a green event. Okay, permanently increase the water difficulty on this area by 1. That means that instead of 3+, I will take from here a 4+ and add it here. Okay, so now it becomes more difficult. That's one example. Things can happen. If the critical was here on the red one, respectively, I would draw an event from the red deck and resolve it. And you guessed it right, if it was on the yellow one over here, yeah, then I would draw from the yellow deck and resolve it. So this happens for all critical areas, meaning all areas that have 3 fire tokens. If it has 4, I told you already, it's already burned in the previous step. And then for the hazard, we search throughout the city areas for areas containing hazard tokens, the ones I've shown you before, like for example this one, explosive, okay, or a gas tank or electricity, the ones we've seen before. Okay, so any of those hazard tiles needs to be checked now, and then we follow the event that they trigger. Let's see them one by one. Explosive substances, these ones here. If there is an explosive substance token on an area which contains at least 1 fire, you remove the token and place 1 fire token on this area and 1 fire on the 2 adjacent spaces with the highest space number. Ouch. Next one is power cut, with this hazard here. During the action phase, if there is a power cut token on an area, you cannot perform the extinguish action in that area, and whenever you have to add a power cut token to the area, you place it over the water roll requirement of that area. Then we have the gas tank, which is this one over here. This gas tank is also a hazard. If there is a gas tank token on an area which contains at least 1 fire, you remove the token and place 3 fire tokens on this area. That means it burns more. And the last token is the thick smoke, this one over here. It has a 2+ and a 1+ side. If there is thick smoke on an area, the water roll requirement for that area is increased by 2. And then extinguish difficulty token should be added on that area as a reminder. Okay? And then it goes back to 1 and then it's removed. Nice. Now, let's talk about distress calls. We've seen areas that have distress calls. Okay? And these areas are resolved respectively during that round. They can be resolved earlier for an early response or at that round, but if that round passes and you haven't resolved it, then it's a late response. So let's see what happens. These are linked with this deck, the distress call deck, which, as I showed you, it has the fast response before time, the on time, and the late response. So I'm adding it here so that we can examine it and discuss about it. Distress calls, each distress call indicates the round players must answer it. To answer distress calls, a firefighter must be present on the area containing a distress call token by the end of that round, action phase. When this is done, this is considered on-time response. Players have the chance to respond to a distress call earlier than the round indicated, and they should if they can, on each distress call token, and it is considered a fast response. A distress call is automatically answered on the round indicated even if a firefighter is not present on the area. However, this is considered a late response. Once a distress call is answered, check the below and apply the results based on the response time. Let's say you responded before the third round, okay? So that's a fast response. When a firefighter is present at the end of the action phase before the indicated round, you draw a distress call card and add it to the area. Only the green is applied, which is the lighter that can happen. If it's an on-time response, the firefighter is present by the end of the action phase of the indicated round, but so at the end of the third round here, it's still on time. Then the yellow is what happens, which is the on-time response. And the last one is the late response, when there is no firefighter present at the end of the third round. Okay. Then the distress call is a late response, and then the worst happens, which is in this case losing one scenario point respectively. Next is the fire growth. We search throughout the city for areas containing at least one active fire, and we place one inactive fire turned sideways on each such area. That means, for example, we take all the areas one by one, and okay, let's focus on this one. We have one active fire because the fire is standing upwards, like that, okay? So, for each one of those, we take from the supply one fire and we put it sideways, inactive. Exception, you do not place fire on the areas already containing at least one inactive fire. So if it was already like that, we're not going to add a second one, okay, at this stage. Important, it's if during this phase you have to place a fire and there is not enough tokens in the general supply, then you lose one scenario point. So also important, whenever fire gets placed on the game board for any reason, it is always placed inactive, laid sideways, as long as inactive fire does not count for any total. At the start of each round though, all newly added fires are turned upright and become active. Meaning, on the next round at the start they will turn up and they will become active. Fire does not grow on roads. No road may contain more than one fire. So if you have a fire here, you will not add any additional fire, because it's an open road and one is the max that it can have. Next is the fire spread. Search throughout the city for areas adjacent to spaces containing at least one active fire and roll an all-purpose die, a green die, for each such area. Depending on the spread difficulty level that you have chosen and you're playing with, you follow the below table to see how much fire spreads in each such area. So if you're playing with the easy spread fire difficulty, you focus on this line. If you're playing with the hard, you focus on the red line. Okay, so for example, for each such area, I'm going to roll 1d6, and let's say I'm playing with an easy, with a green one. So if I roll the 3, nothing happens, no fire spreads. The same happens with 2 or with 1. But if I roll 4 or 5, I add one more fire. If I rolled fire spreads, that means. If I rolled 6, I add 2 more fires. And you can see that this becomes even more difficult if you're playing with a hard level, because it spreads from 3 and up. In all cases, areas with at least one firefighter, they just modify by 1. That means that if you have a firefighter, you need 5+ in order to spread the fire, because the firefighter is pushing it not to be spread. Fire does not spread to areas already containing at least one inactive fire. As we said before, you do not roll a die for such areas. And fire does not spread on roads during the fire spread. The end of round phase, which is the 4th phase of the round, where you move the round marker. During this phase, players check if they have reached the specific number of scenario points on the scenario point track, which is going to be, I think, on the hospital tile, if I'm not mistaken. If they have, they lose the game immediately. Otherwise, you move the round token to the next round on the track board, then you continue. If there are any 2+ thick smoke tokens on areas, meaning tokens like that, indicating the 2+, then you flip them back to the 1+ side and you replace the extinguishing difficulty token accordingly. If there are 1+6 smoke tokens on the game board, they remove them from the game board, and then you remove the extinguished difficulty tokens so that it goes back to its normal one. There are a couple of more rules. For hazards, the scenario you choose to play as well may have event cards which will ask you to add hazard tokens during the play on the game board. To do so, you shuffle the hazard cards, the yellow ones that we've seen before, and then you draw one randomly, and for each type you add the respective hazard token for that area. You draw one additional hazard card until you either draw one that hasn't already been placed on that area, or you run out of cards. That means that each area cannot have 2 times the same hazard, okay? But more different types of hazards can happen to coexist on the same area. The last thing is the debris. Remember, debris are these tiles over here. The debris tiles are tiles that are placed according to the scenario most of the times. Debris present an additional obstacle for players, making the job harder. A firefighter may enter an area that has 1 or more debris in it. However, in order to exit an area with 1 or more debris in it, players must first remove those debris. To remove a debris token, a player must activate their fire axe, while a firefighter and a fire axe are present within the area containing the debris. Similarly, a vehicle or a firefighter may enter a road that has 1 or more debris. However, in order to exit the debris, must be first removed using a firefighter and a fire axe respectively. And that's the details about some additional rules. Game end. The game ends after the last run has been completed, and players check if they have successfully completed their objective. Players lose 1 scenario point for each injured person that has not been delivered to the hospital, and then if the objective has been completed and the player has less than the specified number of lost scenario points, they will continue and win the game. Again, keep in mind that different scenarios are depicted for different number of players, adjusting difficulty with different objectives, so all this brings lots and lots of replayability and different options from scenario to scenario. And there you have it. This is everything you need to know about Firefighters on Duty, so let's move back up for my final opinion on the game. Firefighters on Duty is a highly thematic and mechanically making sense game. It's one of those games that I think real time is the mechanism to go to because it emulates the pressure, the stress, the need for fast response, quick decisions, making the right decisions quickly, and balancing a lot of things and a lot of factors. It's a game that has very simple rules. It's a ton of fun, very enjoyable, very memorable gaming experience, I would say. But I would also say that it's highly thematic. It brings the best of the theme in this real-time game. It has a lot of replay value, it has a lot of scenarios, it has beautiful table presence. You're going to get with your friends or on your own on a very stressed, thinky and demanding situation where you need to balance a lot of things out and make the right decisions at the right time. You have to cooperate and make sure to make the best out of the team efforts. This is a co-op game. You have to divide your forces. The difficulty is adjusted according to the number of players, of course, but overall this is a very thematic and very enjoyable game. I highly recommend it. I would definitely ask you to give it a try and check it out if you can in any means. The game is going to be a huge success. I'm foreseeing that already because it keeps the DNA, let's say, of Project Elite and builds on that. So it's not a rethemed Project Elite, but I think all these people who loved Project Elite are also going to love Firefighters on Duty. But on top of that, people who haven't tried Project Elite, either for the theme or for the different reasons they're missing, in my opinion. But all those who haven't tried it, now they're going to love it also because it's a different approach, a different theme, different ideas, but the DNA of what made Project Elite success is already there. So fantastic idea, check it out. I'm going to add the link in the description of the video so you can follow up for more information. Stay tuned, this is a game not to be missed. Firefighters on Duty now, or soon I should say, on Kickstarter.